What's up, trainers? Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG online video. Today we're going to be breaking down some of the top 3 budget decks for the 2021 Pokemon TCG standard format. These are decks that you can assemble physically for not as much money as some of the other popular decks, and that you can assemble online without having to go through a lot of trades, buy a lot of packs, and give away a lot of your favorite cards. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our first deck. Alright, so our first deck, I'm not going to give you guys an exact deck profile for these since I'm going to be covering 3 decks today, but I will talk a little bit about the cards you would want to include in the deck and how the deck works. So the first one, I gotta give a quick shout out to PokeDripDrop. I've shouted him out before. He is awesome. He made a video on the Gourgeist deck. I will link to it in the description if you are interested. But this Gourgeist deck, I really had never heard about it. I just never looked at this card. It's just a really underrated card, actually. So it has 120 HP, it's Psychic type, and Pandemonium for 2 colors energy, aka Twin Energy. Reveals the top 6 cards of your deck and does 60 damage for each Psychic Pokemon you find there. Then you shuffle those Pokemon back into your deck and discard the other cards. So, effectively, if you get all 6 Psychic Pokemon on the top of your deck, you'll dish out 360, which is pretty good. But you're not going to be able to win that all the time, so most of the time you're probably going to be hitting about 180. You also probably notice that it says it discards the cards that are not Psychic Pokemon, and you may not like that. You don't want to discard your energies into supporters. But if you think about it for a second, if you keep using Pandemonium over and over, it effectively thins out your deck so that to the point where it's just Psychic Pokemon. So if you can thin out your deck enough, then it'll be Psychic Pokemon every time you use Pandemonium, and you'll be able to hit for a lot of damage. So you don't really have to worry about thinning out your deck to where it's just Psychic Pokemon, because Pandemonium does that for you as you're attacking. In addition, the Pumpkaboo it evolves from is pretty awesome. And most of the time, these Pokemon aren't too great. They're just in the deck to evolve into the Pokemon that you are using. But we have Pumpkaboo here with his Pumpkin Pit ability. You've probably seen it played in some other decks because it is very similar to Marshadow from Unbroken Bonds. It says when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard a Stadium card in play. So when you're putting these Pumpkaboo down to evolve into Gourgeist, you can get rid of a Stadium that might be benefiting your opponent. So it's always awesome to have Pumpkaboo in here as a little bit of a boost. So the reason I have this deck on here as a budget deck is because you could potentially take this deck to the point where you're using a ton of Psychic Pokemon that are kind of flashy, you know, maybe some of these Pokemon V as your Psychic type Pokemon, or you could go with something a little less crazy and just use some regular Psychic Pokemon, because your main attacker is Gourgeist. You're not going to be attacking with much else, so you can completely adjust and edit this deck based on how much you're willing to spend. So you can go bananas with whatever you want to include. If you want to do evolution lines, or if you just want to do some basic Pokemon, it is all up to you. You will want to include a little bit more than maybe your general minimum of 20 you have for a Pokemon deck. You will want to go maybe a little above the general limit of 20 Pokemon in the deck, just because you do want to have a bit more Psychic Pokemon in here so you can hit for some big damage with Pandemonium. But there is one card that I want to touch on real quick that is not Psychic, that you do want to have one card of in your deck, and that is a Rangaroo, because this is a good card that you can use Primate Wisdom once your turn, switch a card from your hand to the top card of your deck, basically in here just so that way you can guarantee yourself at least 60 damage off of Gourgeist. You can switch a Psychic Pokemon from your hand to the top of your deck to make sure you hit at least 60 off of your Pandemonium, just so you don't completely miss and have to discard 6 cards. For the trainers, we are going to have a little bit different trainers in this deck. So with Marnie is always played in a lot of decks, but in this one you're definitely going to have 4, because what this can do is take out those psychic Pokemon from your hand and put them back into your deck, because if you don't have a psychic Pokemon in your deck, you won't be able to hit for very much damage. Another supporter that is very similar to Marnie is Bruno, and this is another card that you probably want to have 4 copies of, because the same thing draws 4 cards after shuffling your hand into your deck, but you do get to draw up to 7 if one of your Pokemon was knocked out by your opponent's attack during their last turn. And then, of course, some Professor Magnolia, Professor Juniper, or Professor Oak, Professor's Research of any kind, maybe a couple bosses' orders in there as well. And then you will want to have whatever combination of Quick Ball, Evolution Instance, Great Ball, and Level Ball you want. It kind of just depends on what types of Pokemon you are playing for your Psychic types. And then, as far as retreating goes, you probably won't be doing too much retreating, but a couple copies of Air Balloon won't be bad. And then for energy, make sure you include that twin energy. This is a card that makes a lot of decks run super well because it provides 2 Colress energy for just 1 attachment. Obviously, it can't go onto those Pokemon V or GX, but it does work with Gourgeist, and that will allow you to get set up and attacking a lot quicker. And then probably just some basic Psychic energy in case you're looking to potentially attack with some of the other Pokemon in your deck. Our next deck is Regidrago. This is a very popular budget deck, and it's one that's been seen on the competitive scene, despite the fact that it does not cost as much as some of the other decks. I actually made a full deck breakdown of the Regidrago deck. If you want to go check that out, it's on my channel. But today we're going to talk about Regidrago and how it works as a budget deck, and how you can edit the deck to suit how much money you're willing to spend on it. So with Regidrago, let's talk about it real quick. Dragon Energy, 2 grass, 1 fire, does 240 damage, minus 20 for every damage counter on Regidrago. The reason this works is because Regidrago is going to get one-shotted by a lot of Pokemon, so you won't have to worry about that damage minus on the Dragon Energy attack because it has so little health. But the main way that you can edit this deck comes down to how you want to accelerate your energy. So in my video on Regidrago, I showed how you could use it with Rillaboom, which was a pretty neat way to use it in my opinion. But you can also use it with maybe Turbo Patch. Turbo Patch is a little more risky, but it might cost a little less. If you want to see what Turbo Patch does, I'll pull it up here. So Turbo Patch says, flip coin. If heads, attach a basic energy card for your discard battle one of your basic Pokemon that isn't a Pokemon GX. So Turbo Patch can work pretty well with Regidrago to get those energy on there. I thought Rillaboom was just a little bit more consistent, but if you have some Turbo Patch laying around, you could easily use these. You might want to include Glimwood Tingle then, so that way you can make sure you're flipping heads on these Turbo Patch. The great thing about Regidrago is that it uses both fire and grass type energy attack, which allows you to have some access to some potential other attackers. So this is all up to you. Then again, you can edit it based on how much you're willing to spend or how much you're willing to give up online. So you could go with maybe some more fire type Pokemon attackers, or I would recommend going with more grass because Regidrago's attack does require more grass energy. So maybe some fun Pokemon to play around with like Leafeon V or Leafeon V Max. It all depends on how much you're willing to spend, what cards are your favorites, and which ones you already have on hand. Of course, in the trainer cards, you will want to have some Pokemon search, like Quick Ball, and maybe depending on what Pokemon you're playing, Level Ball or Evolution Incense. And then you want to have some basic supporters as well, like Professor's Research, Marty, and Boss's Orders. Okay, this last budget deck, I don't want you guys to click off the video and go put a mean comment down below. You should put a comment down below, not a mean one, but any TCG related. I do read them all, and I would love to hear from you guys. But anyways, do not click off the video because this next deck is Inteleon VMAX, which I know at first you're like, whoa, hold up. An Inteleon VMAX deck would cost a lot of money to assemble physically, but I have a little trick that makes it not cost as much, which is pretty cool and pretty cunning in my opinion. So I have done this with previous week battle decks. When they've come out, I'll buy 2 because usually you'll get like 2 Reshiram and Charizard, for example. You would ideally want 4 in your deck, and so I would buy a second one to get 2 more Reshiram and Charizard. I did that with Sasha V, and it can be done with Inteleon VMAX. So Inteleon VMAX is a deck that you're going to want to have 4 copies of Inteleon V in addition to 4 copies of Inteleon VMAX. So Inteleon VMAX has 320 HP, Hydro Snipe 60, put an energy attached to one of your opponent's active Pokemon into their hand. And then Max Bullet is what you're playing it for, 160 plus 60 to one of your opponent's pitch Pokemon. It is a very powerful card. It is a little pricey on its own on websites like TCG Player, but Inteleon VMAX is a deck that can be easily assembled by purchasing 2 weak battle decks. So in the weak battle deck, you'll get 2 copies of the Inteleon V and 2 copies of Inteleon VMAX. Usually you want to have either a 3-3 line or a 4-4 line, and so by purchasing a second weak battle deck, you will be able to easily get those Inteleon V and VMAX you need. And then the other part of the deck is the Inteleon Evolution Chain. So you'll want to start with Sobble, and ideally you would want to use the Rapid Strike Sobble, but that does not come in the League Battle deck. The one you'll get is actually this one from Sword Shield, not the Holo, excuse me, this one, which isn't as good, but it doesn't make a huge difference. So after buying 2 weak battle decks, you'll end up with 4 of these, so you can easily use the Sobble, and then you'll also end up with 4 of the amazing Drizzile card. So Drizzile here has Shady Dealings, which is a great engine. It allows you to play it from your hand to evolve your Pokemon, and when you do that, get to search your deck for a trainer card. So this helps the deck run and allows you to build a deck that's budget friendly without having to buy expensive cards like Crobat V. And then finally, you'll end off the evolution chain with Inteleon with Shady Dealings. So in a normal Inteleon VMAX deck or any deck that plays the Inteleon line, you would probably see 3 copies of this quick shooting Inteleon. Unfortunately, this one does not come in the weak battle deck. You'll actually be getting the Inteleon with the Shady Dealings, so it's not as good as the quick shooting one, but it works just fine. And like I said, with Drizzile, Shady Dealings helps you to go find some trainer cards that you would be looking for with Crobat V, and Inteleon and just Drizzile allow you to do that without having to spend a bunch of money on Crobat V. And then Aqua Bullet is also a viable attack and kind of plays into the strategy of Inteleon VMAX. So at the end, your Inteleon deck would probably end up being 4 Sobble, 4 Drizzile, 4 Inteleon, and then your 4 Inteleon V and 4 Inteleon VMAX. It's one way to go. And then there's also some Frostmoth included in those weak battle decks, so if you want to drop down the Inteleon evolution chains, either one, and put in some Frostmoth, you can do that. You would also have a good supply of trainer cards and a full 4/4/4 Lost Disorders Marnie and Professor's Research after purchasing 2 decks. Also have access to some Air Wound and some basic Pokemon search cards as well as Water Energy. So basically, if you purchase 2 Inteleon VMAX Week Battle decks, it gets you set up to build an Inteleon VMAX deck that can hold its own in the competitive format, and you probably only ended up spending around or under $50, which is not too bad. That's the top 3 budget decks for the 2021 Pokemon TCG standard format. If you enjoyed, give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it and it really helps the channel out. Drop me a comment down below letting me know which one of these was your favorite budget deck, or is there a budget deck you're playing right now that you're enjoying, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss new Pokemon TCG content when it's uploaded on Mondays and Thursdays. That's it for me, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, trainers.